What's up guys, Bird Informatic Gaming here, and I'm bringing you another PvP build for the Necromancer. What this build focuses on is conditions, AoE conditions. So I'm using the staff for all of the marks, which are, if you don't know, marks are just AoEs and then they apply some sort of condition. So my number 2 applies bleeding and it applies regen as well. So you see how the marks work. It's just kind of an AoE thing. And then the number 3 is Chillblains. It applies poison and a chill in an area. Putrid Mark, which is number 4, it inscribes a mark and transfers conditions from allies to foes. So it's a condition removal. And instead of just getting rid of the condition, it actually puts them on enemies. So you're applying even more conditions. And then the 5th one is Reaper's Mark. That's a fear. I really like putting this on. Fear is always good to use when like your teammate's about to get stomped, or you know someone's trying to resurrect another person. You could put the mark on here. It's only 1 second, but that could give you enough time to stomp somebody or to resurrect your teammate. Now, besides the marks, we're also using wells. There's also kind of the same idea as marks. Usually wells are, when you use it, it just drops right under you, but because of our traits, wells are ground targeted, so now I can target my wells anywhere I want. So I'm actually using Well of Blood for my heal, and that not only does a heal, but it does like a regen as well. Every time it pulses, it'll heal, and it gives you a combo field. For the first utility, Well of Suffering, damages foes and inflicts invulnerability. Pretty simple. And then Well of Corruption, it converts boons on enemies and turns them into conditions. It's like the same thing as the mark, except it's taking boons off of enemies and putting conditions on them. Just like the mark takes conditions off of your allies and puts them on the enemies. So yeah, this is a great way to strip someone of their boons, and all of a sudden they have a lot of conditions on instead. And then Well of Darkness, which blinds. And if you don't know, in our trait, we have a trait that when we blind someone, we actually chill them as well. So it's another kind of CC, the way to slow them down. And then number 5 is Plague, or sorry, my elite is Plague. And you become a virulent cloud and inflict multiple conditions on foes you touch. And when you go into this, it actually gives you bonus health as well. I think I have up to like 30,000 health when I go into Plague. So this whole build, if you haven't understood yet, is all about AoE conditioning. So if you're in a group fight, this is a great build to have. Maybe like 8 versus 8 random SPVP games, it's a little bit harder. But if you're doing like an organized 5 vs 5 or the 10-man SPVP games, and then there are like more organized group fights, I think this build rocks in those type of situations. For the staff auto attack, it's actually like another AoE, but it shoots in a line. What it does is it actually gives you life force for every person it hits. So if you need a way to stack up your life force to use your Death Shroud, then that's a good one to use. So if you threw down, let me just throw down all my marks and all my wells, and then I'll spam my number 1, and you'll kind of see the AoE damage I do. Yeah, see, they're all dying before I can even show you all the damage in an area I do. So usually builds, they focus on attacking a target or multiple targets, but this thing is like, it's about attacking areas. So it's about controlling areas, control points, and hallways or narrow passages that people have to go through. This is where it excels. It's great at map control. So aside from that, on my offset, I'm using Scepter and Dagger. There's a couple of things I like about Scepter and Dagger. For the dagger, for the number 4, I actually take 3 conditions off of myself and I put it onto my target. So it's a nice condition removal. And then I have my number 5, which is an AoE, and it applies poison. It's like the same thing as a mark, basically. And then for the scepter, I have the number 2, which is the cripple, and then the bleed, which is really nice. The cripple is what I use it mostly for, but the bleed is just extra benefit. And then the number 1, when I'm doing like a 1 versus 1, I'll throw down my marks, and then I'll go to my scepter, and I'll use my number 1 for my scepter as my auto attack instead of my auto attack on my staff, because you can see how the conditions just keep building up and up and up just from my auto attack, not to mention all of the marks and wells that I've put down before that. So let's look at our traits. For curses, I put in 30. I have Chilling Darkness, which I was telling you about before. When I blind a target, I also apply Chill for 1 second. And when you apply Chill, it makes it much easier to place down your marks in, you know, like in the right place. So if you use your Chill on a group of enemies, then they kind of get stuck into your marks and your wells for a few more seconds. Focus Rituals, which lets our wells be ground targeted instead of just dropping at our feet. Then that way we can target somewhere else and put our wells down. And then I have Lingering Curse on Scepter. I took this mostly just because of 1 versus 1s. I was feeling a little weak, just because hitting them with your marks and stuff like that is really hard on a 1 versus 1, especially like against a thief or maybe even a ranger. So I took this just so I can spam my number 1 on my scepter after I put my marks down, and then the conditions will build up. Death Magic, I have 20 points. For my first major trait, I have Greater Marks, which makes my marks bigger, and they become unblockable. And you'd actually be surprised how often marks are blocked. So once you get this, you realize like how beneficial it actually is. And for the second major trait, I took Staff Mastery. Staff skills recharge 20% faster, so that'll give me more opportunity to use my marks on my staff. And Blood Magic, siphoning health is 50% more effective. There's not really another trait in the first tier that's that great, but it gives you more. And the first minor trait in the second tier is Vampiric, which gives you health whenever you hit somebody. So if you're spamming your number 1 on your scepter while you're doing a 1 versus 1, you know, after you put your AoEs down, you know, you're siphoning health and you're applying heavy condition onto somebody, which gives you kind of that, you know, you have high toughness through this build, and then you can just out-survive somebody while the conditions just wear them down eventually. And then the second major trait, I took Ritual Mastery, which is wells recharge 20% faster. So I could put my wells and my marks down a lot faster. I don't have to wait as long. So let's look at our runes and our sigils and things like that. I'm using Superior Rune of the Undead for condition damage and toughness, and then the 6-up bonus gives me 5% of toughness becomes condition damage. So if you look at my attributes, that's roughly 140 extra condition damage that I'm getting. For my amulet, I'm using the Shaman's Amulet because when I use a condition build, I love high toughness. So I went with the Shaman's Amulet, and I get the healing power, which might not make a whole lot of sense in this build, but when you use your Well of Blood, which is your heal, and then you're using your scepter and your dagger, I mean, it adds up. So when you're doing your one-on-ones, and you can't really just stand back and put down your marks and wells, you're healing yourself, and while you're applying a lot of conditions. So for me, I think it balances out. You could use the Carry-On Amulet if you want for more damage, but for me, I used both, and I kind of lean towards the Shaman's Amulet. For the sigil, I'm using Sigil of Superior Agony, which increases my bleeding duration by 10%. The scepter, I'm using the same thing, increased bleeding duration. And then the dagger, I have Sigil of Superior Doom, so when I switch to my scepter dagger, the next attack inflicts poison as well. Alright, thanks guys. This has been Burden from AddictGaming.com. If you want a more in-depth look at the build, check out our site, and we go more in-depth with the skills and all that kind of stuff. or you can jump over to our forums and we can talk about it there. If you have any suggestions, or you use a build like this and you think you have a good idea, or maybe we missed something, let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the content and you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for more Guild Wars 2 videos in the future. Alright, thanks guys. And remember, video game addiction is not a bad thing, so please don't stop.